So in this vector problem, we are told that there are two forces of 60 pounds and 75 pounds, and their resulting magnitude is 100 pounds. So the question is, what was the angle between these two forces to begin with? So let's start by drawing a little diagram. Let's say we have a 60-pound force going like this. Okay, so this is 60 pounds going directly to the right because that's the way I want it. You can make it go whatever way you want, but this is basically the easiest way. So then there's another force, a 75-pound force, and it's acting at some angle to this body. We don't know what the angle is, so let's make it look like that just for fun. Now 75 is more pounds than 60, so this red line should be a little bit longer than my black line that's 60, just so that my eyes believe it. So now when I make my parallelogram, because that's how we find these problems, we make our parallelogram. So our 60-degree or 60-pound force comes up here, and our 75-pound force comes over here, so that they're a parallelogram. And this would be the resulting force from those two. The resultant always splits the two, not exactly in the middle, but it always goes between the two forces. Now we're told that this is 100 pounds. So the question is, what was this angle down here to begin with? So that the 100 pound is the resulting force. Because depending on the angles that these things act at, the force will be greater than or less than 100, based upon their angle. So we need to figure out what that angle was to begin with. So we're going to move the 75 over to here, because now I have the side, side, side property for my triangle. Side, side, side. And when I have a side, side, side set up, I can use the law of cosines to figure out an angle. Okay, now unfortunately it can't be this red angle down here because that is not part of a triangle that I have. So what I can find, though, that would be very beneficial is this angle right here. Because if I find this angle, then these two angles add up to 180 because this is a parallelogram, and these are consecutive angles of a parallelogram. So if I could figure out what this blue angle is, I simply have to subtract that from 180 to get the angle between the 60 and the 75, or the red angle. So I'm going to use the law of cosines for solving an angle, and that looks like this. So the angle, I'm just going to call this angle x, is found by taking the inverse cosine of these numbers. 60 squared plus 75 squared minus 100 squared. Okay, because it's 100 is across from the angle that I want, that's the thing that gets subtracted, over 2 times 60 times 75. So this is a little manipulation of the law of cosines if you knew two sides and an angle. Okay, so I'm going to put all this into my calculator, take the inverse cosine of this thing. So bear with me 1 second while I put it in to my calculator. 60 squared plus 75 squared minus 100 squared divided by 2 times 60 times 75. That gives me an angle of basically 95 degrees, 94.9. So if we round to one decimal, that would be 95 degrees. Okay, now that's not the angle between my 60 and my 75. Remember, that's this angle right here. So if I subtract this from 180, 180 minus 95 tells me that the angle that these two things started out at was actually 85 degrees. So 85 degrees is the measure of the angle between the 60-degree force and the 60-pound force and the 75-pound force. So we use the law of cosines to find the angle across from the resultant, and then subtract it from 180 to find our desired angle.